guys, are you looking to make your college application super shiny awesome? If so, in this video, I'm going to talk to you guys about how to solicit the best letters of recommendation possible. You're wondering who I am. My name is Brooke. I'm an independent college consultant. I've been doing this for over a decade and a half, and I also help coach students to awesome scores on the SAT and ACT. The other thing that I've done is I've created 2 online courses for the SAT and the ACT, the best SAT prep course ever, the best ACT prep course ever. Check them out at SupertutorTV.com. It's everything that you need to get an awesome score, so definitely go check it out. And the other thing I have is a couple of math books. If those are more in your budget, Amazon.com is where you can find those. And you can subscribe to us totally for free. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Make sure you're joining us. And if nothing else, click the subscribe button, people. Come on, you know you want to. Okay, now let's talk letters of recommendation. So a few months ago, I think I tweeted a really great tweet from a woman named Rachel Weedham on letters of recommendation. And she has some points that are some of my points, and she had some other good points as well. And that inspired me to think, wow, I should be sharing a few of her tips with kids because they're good advice. So that's what I'm going to share with you, is some great tips for letters of recommendation that you can use to get the best letters possible. The first step in crafting a great recommendation letter is to pick the right people to write you letters of recommendation. The goal for all of you on your college applications is to create this smorgasbord of delightful treats and treasures for people to evaluate and look over that express all the wonderful aspects of you and who you are. So with that being the case, one of the things that I learned when I was a Stanford admissions volunteer before I really went into consulting was the idea that you should not repeat anything in your application, meaning every essay needs to be about a different facet of who you are. And that's really true. The more you diversify your application, the more interesting you become. Now, that doesn't mean you don't build out themes, right? You might build out a theme of how you love engineering and computer science and mathematics, but each essay isn't about the exact same thing, right? You don't write about that same computer science competition 3 times. It's boring. You want to vary your stories so that we see you from all these different angles and have all these different stories on you, okay? The other thing is you want a portrait that's what that college or that program wants to know about, right? If you're applying to something academic, that school wants to know, how do you perform academically? That's why they ask you for teachers. So my first thing in pick the right people is make sure you follow the rules when you pick the right people. And what I mean by follow the rules is colleges and universities have rules in terms of who you should be sending letters of recommendation from. Now, obviously, if you're out of school or you have sort of special circumstances, I've had people before applying and they've been in the military or they've been out of school for several years, you can contact the admissions office of an individual college you're applying to ask if it might be more appropriate to send them a letter of recommendation from someone who knows you more recently. But in any case, I want you to make sure you stick to the instructions, give colleges what they want, but at the same time, you want to select recommenders who are going to show lots of awesome things about you. Next piece of picking the right people is you want to figure out who has the best stories on you. And that means you're going to pick somebody who knows something about you that maybe isn't blasted all over your application. For example, when I was in high school, I knew what teacher had a good story on me. It was my German teacher, because I did German independent study during lunch periods because I couldn't fit it in my schedule unless I sacrificed band or AP classes. And so I had to work my schedule in some way to continue taking German language. And she worked with me and we formed our own class that was just a person of me. And I worked with her a couple times a week. And then I did independent study the other days. And I would study in the library on my own, and we worked it out. She knew that I went out of my way and I contacted the administration. I went through this whole process just so I could continue in my studies and not disrupt them and stay in all my AP classes. And she knew that I fought for this and that I'm sort of a go-getter in that way. So I knew that she had that story on me, and I thought she would write a great letter of recommendation to that end. And so I selected her. I'm not necessarily picking the person I like the most. I'm picking the person who I think is going to add the best piece to the puzzle that is my entire application, okay? On another note, you can also pick people in subject matters that you want to impress colleges on, right? So if you want to apply to the engineering program, it might be a good idea to ask somebody who's a math, science, or engineering teacher to recommend you, because they're going to know you in that context. The other thing that I'm going to say when you're picking things, this is my third thing, is pick people who know how to tell a story. So the other thing that can happen is sometimes there are some reviewers, and this is like notorious, who will be like, write a letter yourself and I will sign it. That is like my least favorite way to ever get a letter of recommendation. And sometimes it's the only thing that happens, and we all know that this kind of thing happens, but those are generally not the best letters of recommendation because there's something about them that, sounds like the rest of your essays. Yeah, huh. So if somebody tells you that they're going to do that, you might consider asking someone else. The other thing that I'm going to say about choosing the right person, you want to try to, if you're between people, choose the person who you think is going to be a better storyteller. What that means is sometimes if I'm between, a math teacher who's very soft-spoken, and I really love the math teacher, but they're really not very personal, and they might not be a really great storyteller, and they might be kind of awkward when it comes to writing. And then I have an English teacher who's like the most verbose, prose-friendly, orator of all. My English teacher may write a better essay just because she's an English teacher and she's really good at writing. But that's not necessarily true. Sometimes I've had math teachers that are excellent storytellers. So if I know I have teachers that are good storytellers, you can use that as a deciding factor if you're not sure who to ask. And finally, my last point about picking the right people is be aware of the questions that they're going to be asked. Some of the questions that they're going to be asked on typical recommendations are these weird checkbox questions. They're going to be asked, how well do you know the applicant? How long have you known the applicant? And how do they compare to other students? Are they the best student you've ever met or the worst? And sometimes there's even a whole rigmarole of questions like, how responsible do you think this person is? How good at attention to detail are they? How good of a writer are they? They'll go through 20 questions with all of these little radio buttons from 0 to 10. And you've got to rank this person on 0 to 10, and you want 10s. Does it always happen? No. Sometimes it's just a letter. But just know that that's the kind of questionnaire that they might be getting, and they're going to compare you to other students. And if you're going to stack up and that teacher's going to stick her neck out for you, it's a good teacher to pick. Okay. Enough about picking the right people. Once you've picked the right person, it's time to ask. Okay, so how do you ask? I like to ask via email because it's the easiest to respond to. If you ask people in person, it can sometimes be kind of awkward. Like if you're asking your teacher in person and they want to say no, or maybe they need to check their calendar, or maybe they need to see how many they've already agreed to write. So it can be a hard question to answer on the spot. In any case, you're going to ask them, you're going to write a nice email, you're going to tell them, here's what I've been up to, and here's where I'm applying, and here's why I think you would be awesome to help me out with this. Maybe also flatter them a little bit, but make it brief. Don't take too long. Flatter them a little bit. Say, I know you seem like you've really loved computer science, and that's always inspired me, and that's why I want to major in it, Also, make sure you tell them when it's due and tell them what's expected. Is it just a letter of recommendation? Do they have to fill out a survey? And then ask, and then let it go, okay? And then wait for it to come back. And if they come back and they say, sure, I'd love to write a letter for you, fabulous, great. If the answer is, I don't want to write a letter for you, move on. Don't take it too personally. If that's the case, one of two things is happening. Or if they delay and don't get back to you, they might be just sending you a cold shoulder. One of two things is occurring. One, there's something they know about you that gives them pause to sending the most glowing recommendation possible, in which case you don't want that recommendation letter. They're going to sell you out and sell you up the river, and you don't want that person reviewing you, okay? Possibility number two is this person is really busy, or maybe they committed to write 100 other letters of recommendation, and then that too, you don't want a person who is too busy to actually think about it and write it. So regardless, do not beg for letters of recommendation, okay? If somebody says no, be polite, be thoughtful, say, oh, no problem, I know you're really busy. Thanks for reading my message, I hope you're well. The other thing about asking, try to give at least a couple of weeks notice. It's not very polite to ask the day before something's due. You can ask the month before something's due, that's even extra greater. But as long as people have a couple of weeks, that's pretty polite. When it comes to high school, some teachers will only write so many letters of recommendation. So it's sometimes a really good idea to ask at the beginning of the year. That doesn't mean if you haven't asked yet and it's not the beginning of the year that your life is over. It's not. You will still find someone to write your letters of recommendation. It's their job. They're your teachers. They know they have to do this, okay? Now, if that person says, sure, I would love to write you a letter of recommendation, then you get to write another email to them. So the next thing that you're going to do is you're going to give them a big email with a lot of information that makes it really easier for them to write that letter of recommendation. One thing that you should do is create a resume of some sort, or you could even send the activities section of the Common App essay and a copy of your transcript or something. So that will jog their memory and remind them of, oh yeah, I remember he was doing that student council stuff last year. He talked to me about that. He's so passionate about that. I'm gonna write about that. Whatever it is, but it just helps them know and remember all the things about you. Next thing that you want to send them is maybe your essays from your Common Application. Now, if you haven't written all your essays yet, at least send them an outline or bullet points of what ideas you're planning to write your essays on. The other thing you can do is you can give them some ideas on what you'd like them to emphasize. Now, this can be things that are soft qualities, If you could speak to, what you think my potential is as a computer programmer, that would be really helpful because that's the area that I'm applying to at this college, right? You can like lead them into that. The other thing that you can do is you can also clue them in to what else you have done in your application. So you don't have to do this, but you can also send them a copy of your Common Application essay and say, hey, here's my Common App essay. My hope is that you could speak to areas that maybe my Common App essay wasn't able to cover. But you can also send a note, don't feel any pressure to read any of this here. It's just for your reference so you know what else is there. And again, I like the idea of emphasizing that I don't want you to copy what's in these essays, but rather complement it. If there's anything that I left out or that you know about me that might be good to include in addition to this stuff, that would be great. Just be straightforward, guys. It's okay. You don't want to sound too braggy in your ask, but again, you want to give them some ideas on what should I emphasize, what kind of an essay are you looking for, etc. Then describe what you're applying for, right? Tell them what schools you're applying to, tell them what majors you're applying to, all that kind of good stuff. And that's about it. The next step is follow-up. So after you've sent this, you need to follow up with them. Most people are going to procrastinate, just a heads up, just like you do, okay? So you need to remind them a few days before it's due. Like, don't remind them the day it's due, remind them a few days before so that they have some energy, that they feel like, oh gosh, I got to get that done. If the day of they still haven't submitted it, you might send just a gentle reminder, just a reminder that the thing is due today. If for some reason, anything's come up, let me know. Or if you have any trouble, let me know. I'm happy to help. And colleges are not as crazy if the letters of rec are like a day late or 4 hours late or something, and they're not going to hold that totally against you. They want everything in, obviously, but if your application is incomplete because of a teacher and not because of you, and you ask with like plenty of lead time, colleges won't completely hold that against you. All right, next step is you say thank you. That's pretty simple. Write them an email, say thanks, that was so awesome. And usually you guys are gonna get an indication, like on whatever portal you're on, that the letter has been submitted, or you get an email. So as soon as you get that email, just shoot off another email and say, thank you so much for your letter of recommendation. I appreciate your time. And finally, check in and let them know what happened when all is said and done. So if you get into said university, or you get in somewhere, or whenever you get into college, tell the person who wrote your letter of rec because they really want to know. And there you go. That is the steps to getting an awesome, awesome letter of recommendation. I hope you guys like this video. If so, please give it a thumbs up. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Thank you guys, and I will see you guys next time. Good luck with your applications.